We gave her up for adoption. Genevieve drawled, her voice a silk-edged blade utterly devoid of warmth. She's deaf. We can't possibly raise a damaged child. A cold dread seized Tamara, a physical compression in her chest that stole her breath and turned her bones to water. Her hands still clutching the expensive baby gifts, the silver rattle, the cashmere blanket, began to tremble uncontrollably, threatening to drop the carefully chosen symbols of welcome. They saw her as an obstacle, a distant inconvenience to be managed. But they didn't know about the offshore accounts, the labyrinthine trusts, or the relentless, quiet fury that now solidified within her, a weapon honed by decades in ruthless property acquisition. They had no idea who they had just alienated. The call had come, as Tamara reviewed her keynote slides in the Hotel Business Center in Berlin, just 3 days before she was scheduled to speak at the European Property Management Conference. The city hummed outside the soundproof glass, a distant, reassuring thrum. Inside, the hushed click of keyboards and the soft rustle of papers were the only disturbances to her concentration. "Mum, it's happening!" Alistair's voice, excited and breathless, sliced through the continent-spanning connection. "Genevieve's in labour. Right now we're at the hospital. They're saying a few more hours. You have a granddaughter coming, Mum." Tamara's chest tightened in a way she hadn't felt since her beloved husband Arthur had passed. A granddaughter. The word echoed a warm, resonant promise in the sterile business centre. "A granddaughter, I'm getting on a plane." "Don't you have that conference thing, Alistair? You're having a baby." "I know. But you're the keynote speaker, right? That's a big deal. Come after, she'll still be here." His tone was dismissive, already focused on his own impending paternal glory. Tamara glanced at her presentation on the screen, Global Real Estate Trends Navigating Volatility. 200 people registered, a significant contract signed, organizers who had been planning this for months. Professional commitments were sacrosanct in her world. Yet the image of a newborn, her own flesh and blood, obliterated all professional obligations. "I'll be there as soon as I can," she promised, a fierce resolve hardening her voice. 4 days at most. Tell Genevieve I'm coming. She'll be glad. Love you, Mom." He hung up, leaving her staring at the silent phone. A granddaughter. Alistair and Genevieve resided in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a sprawling colonial given to them by Genevieve's parents. The old, money-old families of New England. Tamara had been living in London, diligently managing Arthur's property portfolio, visiting Connecticut maybe once a year. A whirlwind trip that never quite felt like home. This baby, however, would change everything. She would be present. She would be the kind of grandmother who showed up, who was rooted deeply and irrevocably in her granddaughter's life. 3 days later, after delivering her keynote speech with an uncharacteristic urgency, she flew out of Berlin Landing at JFK the next morning. The rental car, a sleek silver sedan, ate up the miles on I-95, carrying her north. In Westport, she made an impulsive stop at a boutique, emerging with a delicate silver rattle, a cloud-soft cashmere blanket, and a stuffed lamb. Too much, probably, for a 5-day-old infant, but she didn't care. Each item was a silent testament to the love already blooming in her heart. Their house, a pristine white colonial with black shutters, sat on Round Hill Road, nestled behind ancient maples and perfectly manicured hedges. She pulled into the circular drive just past noon, gathered her precious cargo, and walked to the front door. Alistair answered before her knuckles could even connect with the polished oak. He looked terrible, exhausted in a way that seemed wrong for a new father, a pallor under his tanned skin. "Mum, let me see her. Where is she?" Tamara stepped forward, a hopeful smile on her face. He stepped back but didn't move aside. "Come in. We need to talk first." The words hit her wrong, a discordant note in the symphony of her anticipation. Genevieve appeared behind him, ethereal in white linen trousers and a silk blouse, her complexion unblemished, her demeanour composed. No baby in her arms, no faint scent of spit-up on her shoulder. no exhaustion etched on her elegant face. "Hello, Tamara." They led her to the formal living room, the one with the antique Louis XV settee, and Genevieve's grandmother's stern portrait presiding from the wall. Not the family room with its sink-into-softness sofas and toys scattered artfully, the room where you'd naturally cradle an infant. Tamara remained standing, the gift bag clutched in her hand, a heavy anchor. "Where's the baby?" Alistair sat down, a slump to his shoulders. Genevieve sat beside him, her hands folded primly in her lap, a picture of chilling composure. "Sit down, Mom." "I don't want to sit," Tamara said, her voice taut impatience beginning to fray the edges of her joy. "I want to meet my granddaughter." He looked at his hands, avoiding her gaze. Genevieve looked at Tamara, her eyes cool, assessing. "We placed her for adoption." She said those dreadful words, falling into the pristine silence like shards of ice. The room went quiet, a sudden suffocating vacuum. Tamara heard the words, but they refused to arrange themselves into any coherent sense. "What are you talking about?" "The baby," Alistair said, his voice barely a whisper. "We gave her up. It's already done." Tamara slowly lowered the gift bag to the polished floor. The house was too still. No crying, no gurgle, no bassinet, no baby sounds anywhere. Only the deafening echo of Genevieve's words. "You called me 4 days ago from the hospital. You told me you were having a daughter." "I know." Genevieve's voice came out flat, emotionless. "We did have a daughter, and we made the best decision, shouting for our family." "Where is she?" Tamara demanded, her voice rising now, a tremor of panic beginning to ripple through her composure. Alistair finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "She's with an agency. They'll place her when they find the right family." "I'm the right family," Tamara nearly shouted. "Tell me which agency and I'll go get her right now." Genevieve shook her head, a dismissive gesture. "It's a closed adoption. We don't have to disclose that information." "How old is she?" "She was born 5 days ago," Alistair said quietly, shame coloring his cheeks. 5 days. Her granddaughter had been alive for 5 days, and they'd already given her away while Tamara was crossing an ocean to meet her. "Why?" The single word was wrenched from her. Genevieve straightened her expression, one of cold, unwavering conviction. "She's deaf. The hospital did a hearing screening before discharge. She failed it. They tested again, confirmed it." Tamara stared at her, utterly aghast. "She's deaf?" "Yes, and you gave her away because she's deaf." "We're not equipped to handle a damaged child, Tamara. Be realistic. The specialists, the therapy, the time. My family wouldn't accept a defective grandchild in the family line." The word defective hung in the air between them, a poisonous miasma. Tamara's hands were shaking now, a violent tremor she fought to suppress, pressing them flat against her thighs. "Tell me where she is. Which agency I'll adopt her myself." "You can't." Alistair stood up, his voice regaining some of its usual authority. "We already checked with lawyers. Grandparents don't have legal standing in adoption cases. The courts protect parental decisions. The records are sealed." They had checked. They had researched it. They had made sure Tamara couldn't stop them. "If you could throw away your own child," Tamara said, her voice chilling, stripped of all maternal warmth, "then you're not the son I raised." Alistair's face hardened. "Then maybe you don't know me at all. You live in London. You visit once a year. You don't get to fly in and tell us how to run our lives." "Alistair." Genevieve touched his arm, but he pulled away. "It's done, Mum. She's gone. You need to accept that." Tamara picked up the gift bag. The silver rattle inside shifted with a faint metallic whisper. "I'll never accept it." She turned a slow, deliberate pivot and walked out, leaving the pristine, silent house behind. She got into the rental car and drove aimlessly at first until she saw the familiar Marriott sign off the highway. She checked in the beige walls of the room and the generic lighthouse painting a stark contrast to the elegant colonial she'd just left. She sat on the bed in her coat, then lay down. And then she cried. She cried until her ribs ached, until her head throbbed, until her eyes were swollen nearly shut. Somewhere in Connecticut, her granddaughter was with strangers, nobody who loved her, nobody who wanted her. She stopped, abruptly staring at the ceiling. Alistair was right about the law. She had no standing, no rights. The agency wouldn't tell her anything. The courts wouldn't help her. But she had money. She had time. And she wasn't leaving Connecticut without her. She sat up and called Evelyn, her office manager in London. "Evelyn, I need you to handle things remotely for a while. I'm staying in the States." "How long, Tamara?" "I don't know yet." She hung up and opened her laptop. She searched for private investigators in Connecticut, found one with excellent reviews, and sent a consultation request. Then she searched for sign language classes. American Sign Language, the language deaf people used here. She found a beginner course starting next week at the library on West Putnam Avenue, registered and paid online. It was past midnight when she finally changed clothes and brushed her teeth. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, 54 years old, jet-lagged eyes swollen. She didn't look like someone about to embark on a years-long search for a child. But she would. However long it took, however much it cost, she would learn to sign, so that when she found her, she could tell her in her own language that she'd never stopped looking. She turned off the light. The darkness, a silent testament sound to her new, unwavering purpose. The next morning, Tamara found an apartment on Riverside Avenue and signed a year's lease. She bought a map of Connecticut at a bookstore and pinned it to the bedroom wall, then acquired push pins from the office supply store. She stuck the first pin in Greenwich, in where Alara had been born, where they had given her away. Tomorrow she would add more pins wherever the investigator told her to look, however many it took. She was bringing her granddaughter home. The sign language class met Tuesday and Thursday evenings at the Greenwich Library. 6 months after she'd pinned that first marker on her wall, Tamara sat in a circle with a dozen other students trying to make her fingers spell the alphabet. Her hands, usually so decisive and capable, wouldn't cooperate. The teacher, a deaf woman named Ms. Bellamy, demonstrated again, her fingers moving with smooth, quick grace. Tamara's fumbled over the letter G, couldn't hold the shape for H. "Practice," Ms. Bellamy signed with a patient smile. "Every day. Muscle memory." Tamara practiced relentlessly. In her car in the grocery store line before bed, her hands cramped. She mixed up B and F constantly. The private investigator she'd hired quit after 8 months, claiming the trail was too cold, the records too sealed. Tamara thanked him and hired another. She kept going to class twice a week, her resolve unyielding. After the first year, she could hold basic conversations. Her grammar was wrong half the time, but she could ask questions, understand simple answers. She started attending deaf community events in Stamford coffee meetups, at a cafe on Summer Street, a book club that met monthly. People were polite but cautious. A hearing woman showing up asking questions about adoption, about deaf children. Some thought she was a social worker, others just kept their distance. But Tamara kept showing up, a constant, quiet presence. She learned to respect when someone preferred to sign rather than speak, learned not to touch people to get their attention, learned that deaf culture had rules and history she needed to understand, not just a language to memorize. Eventually, a woman named Beatrice, who taught at a deaf school in Hartford, started talking to her. Over coffee one afternoon, Tamara told Beatrice about her granddaughter. "They gave her up because she was deaf," Tamara said, signing as she spoke, her hands eloquent now. "I've been looking ever since." Beatrice watched Tamara's hands, her face, her expression. "How long?" "2 years now. And you learned sign language for a baby you've never met." "So I'd be ready when I found her." Beatrice nodded slowly. "I'll ask around." Deaf schools programs. Someone might remember something. But nobody did. Not that year, not the next. Tamara drove to every adoption agency within 200 miles. She showed them the few details: she had a baby girl born in Greenwich, given up at 5 days old, deaf. Most wouldn't talk to her. Privacy laws, sealed records. Some were kind about it. Others just pointed to the door. She visited orphanages in Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. She walked through common rooms, scrutinizing children's faces, wondering if any of them could be Alara. She asked administrators about deaf girls, about records from years ago. Hit dead ends everywhere. Her second investigator found nothing. She hired a third. 5 years in, Tamara had been to over 200 facilities. She was 59. Her sign language was fluent now, though fast signers still lost her sometimes. She knew people in the deaf community across 3 states. They knew her story. Some helped when they could. Others thought she was chasing something impossible. One afternoon she sat in her car outside an orphanage in Albany. Another no. Another dead end. She put her head on the steering wheel and cried. Alara would be 5 years old now, walking, talking in whatever language she'd learned. Maybe she'd been adopted by a good family. Maybe she was happy. Maybe Tamara should stop. But she couldn't. Not knowing where she was, who she was with, if anyone was signing to her. Not knowing if she ever wondered about the grandmother who'd tried to find her. She wiped her face and started the car. The deaf community started calling her the grandmother who never stopped looking. Some said it with admiration. Others said it like she was obsessed. Maybe she was. 10 years after she'd stuck that first pin in her map, Tamara had hundreds of pins. Red for agencies she'd contacted, blue for orphanages she'd visited, green for deaf schools she'd checked. Her apartment walls were covered with maps and lists and notes. She was 62. Her hair had gone mostly grey. Her knees ached from all the driving, all the walking through facilities. But she wasn't stopping. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March, her phone rang. Is this Tamara? The woman looking for her granddaughter? The caller was a social worker named Imogen. She worked at an orphanage in Richmond, Virginia. Someone in the deaf community had mentioned Tamara's search. I think I might know who you're looking for, Imogen said. There's a girl here. She's been with us since she was an infant. She's deaf. She's 12 now. Nobody's ever adopted her. Tamara's hands went numb. 12. The right age. What's her name? We call her Alara, but that might not be her birth name. Her records are sparse. Tamara was already grabbing her keys. I'm coming. I can be there in 6 hours. I'll be here until 5. Tamara drove straight through, stopping once for gas and coffee. Her heart wouldn't slow down. This could be another dead end. She'd had calls like this before, leads that went nowhere. But something felt different. The orphanage sat on the quiet street in Richmond, a converted Victorian with a playground out back. Imogen met her at the door. She was younger than Tamara had expected, maybe 30, with tired eyes. She's outside, Imogen said. Recreation time. I haven't told her you're here. Didn't want to get her hopes up. They walked through the building, past bedrooms, a cafeteria, a room full of donated toys, through a back door to the playground. There, Imogen said, pointing. A girl sat alone on a bench near the fence. Small, for 12, dark hair, pulled back, hunched shoulders, while other kids played basketball and climbed on equipment. She sat separate. She does that, Imogen said quietly. Keeps to herself. She's been passed over so many times. Families come, they meet the kids, they choose someone else. After a while, I think she stopped hoping. Tamara couldn't move, couldn't breathe right. Can I talk to her? Go ahead. Tamara walked across the playground. The girl didn't look up until Tamara was close. Then she glanced at her quickly and looked away the way you do when you're used to being invisible. Tamara sat on the bench and signed. "Hello, my name is Tamara." Ilara's head came up fast, shock in her eyes. Adults didn't usually sign here. She signed back slowly, uncertain. "I'm Ilara." Her signing was basic, limited vocabulary, like someone who'd learned the minimum and never gotten to use it much. "Can I sit with you for a minute?" She nodded. They sat quiet for a moment. Tamara watched her hands, her face. Then she noticed it on Ilara's left shoulder, visible where her t-shirt collar had shifted a small birthmark shaped like a comma. Alistair had the exact same mark in the same place. Tamara's throat closed up. "Ilara," she signed, her voice thick. "Can I ask you some questions about where you're from?" She shrugged, signed. "Don't know much. Been here always since baby." Tamara looked back at the building where Imogen stood watching, then back at Ilara. "I need to go talk to someone inside, but I'm coming right back. Will you wait here?" She nodded, that same empty expression, like she'd learned not to expect anything. Tamara walked back to Imogen on shaking legs. "I need to see her records. Everything you have." Imogen pulled a thin file. "Born in Connecticut, placed at 4 days old through a private agency. Arrived at this facility at 6 months when the agency's temporary foster care fell through. Deaf confirmed. No family contact. No adoption interest. The timeline fit. The location fit. The birthmark fit." "I need a DNA test," Tamara said, her voice raw with a decade of suppressed hope. "I think she's my granddaughter." Imogen's eyes widened. "You're serious? I've been looking for 12 years. I need to know for certain." It took 3 days to arrange through lawyers. 3 days where Tamara drove back to Richmond every morning and sat with Ilara. They signed to each other. Simple conversations. Ilara asked if Tamara lived nearby. Tamara told her she lived far away, but she'd travelled a long time to meet her. "Why?" Ilara signed. "Because I've been looking for someone." Tamara signed back. "Someone very important." The DNA results came back on a Friday. Tamara was in Mr. Caldwell's office in Greenwich when he opened the envelope. 99.7% match, he said, his voice gentle. "She's your biological granddaughter." Tamara put her face in her hands and sobbed. 12 years. 12 years of searching and driving and asking and hoping and nearly giving up, and she'd found her. The adoption process moved faster this time. Tamara had money, a stable home, no red flags. Ilara's caseworker supported it. The orphanage supported it. Within 3 months, they were standing in a Virginia courthouse. The judge looked at Ilara. "Do you understand what's happening today?" Ilara signed, and the interpreter spoke. "Tamara's adopting me. I get to leave here. How do you feel about that?" Ilara looked at Tamara, then signed. "Good." The judge smiled and signed the papers. They flew to London the next week. Ilara sat by the window watching clouds drift past. Tamara signed to her about the fresh start they'd have, about the flat in London, about how she'd promised she'd keep her safe. And she meant it. Ilara nodded, then signed. "Why did you look so long?" Tamara took her hand and signed back. "Because you're my granddaughter. And I never stopped looking for family." Ilara cried then. So did Tamara. The plane lifted off, and Ilara leaned against Tamara's shoulder. After 12 years in an orphanage, after a lifetime of being passed over, she was finally coming home. The London flat felt too big at first. Ilara stood in the doorway of her new bedroom and wouldn't go in, just stared at the bed, the desk, the window overlooking the bustling street. "It's yours," Tamara signed. "Your room." She nodded but didn't move. That first month, Ilara barely looked at Tamara, kept her eyes down, flinched when Tamara moved too quickly. At dinner, she ate fast, like someone might take the plate away. In the morning, she'd be awake before Tamara, sitting on her bed, fully dressed, waiting. Tamara had hired a deaf consultant before they arrived. A woman named Celeste, who helped her retrofit the flat, a visual doorbell that flashed lights. Smoke alarms that strobed better lighting in every room so Alara could see faces clearly. But the physical changes were easier than the rest of it. Ilara's sign language was basic functional. The orphanage had taught her enough to get by, but not enough to really communicate. Tamara's signing was fluent after all those years of practice, but Ilara's had gaps everywhere. They'd start a conversation and she'd freeze, not knowing the signs she needed. Tamara would fingerspell words. Ilara would nod, but Tamara could see the frustration. 3 weeks in Ilara signed thank you after dinner unprompted. Just looked at Tamara and signed it. Tamara had to leave the room so Ilara wouldn't see her cry. The second month, Tamara enrolled her at a school for deaf students in North London and therapy twice a week with a counsellor who specialised in adoption trauma. Ilara went to both without complaint, coming home tired and quiet. The other deaf students tried to include her. Tamara would watch during pickup, see them signing to her, inviting her to sit with them. Ilara would shake her head, sit alone. Her teacher pulled Tamara aside one afternoon. She's struggling socially. The other students don't understand why she won't engage. She spent 12 years being rejected, Tamara said. She doesn't trust it yet. The teacher nodded. We'll keep trying. Tamara made mistakes, lots of them. She'd talk while signing mixing English and sign language structure. One evening, Ilara's teacher called her. You need to sign pure American Sign Language at home, she said gently. Not Simcom, not English on your lips while you sign. Ilara needs full language immersion to catch up. Tamara felt like she'd failed. I didn't know. Now you do. It's fixable. So Tamara stopped speaking when she signed. It felt awkward at first, unnatural. But Ilara's comprehension improved within weeks. 6 months in Ilara had a meltdown over math homework. She screamed, actually screamed out loud, which startled Tamara because she'd never heard Ilara's voice before. Then she threw her textbook across the room, threw her pencil case, swept everything off the desk. Tamara didn't know what to do, stood frozen in the doorway while Ilara sobbed, loud and guttural. Then Tamara sat on the floor and signed, I'm here. I'm not leaving. You're safe. Ilara collapsed next to her. Tamara held her while she cried, her whole body shaking. Later, her therapist explained it. Ilara's fear of abandonment ran deep. Any correction, any criticism felt like rejection, like she was about to be sent away again. It's going to take time, the therapist said. Be patient, be consistent. By the end of that first year, things started shifting. Ilara made a friend, another deaf girl named Phoebe, who wouldn't take no for an answer. Phoebe just kept sitting with Ilara at lunch until Ilara finally started signing back. Tamara learned visual parenting strategies. Get Ilara's attention before starting a conversation. Use clear facial expressions. Don't stand with her back to windows, where light would shadow her face and make lip reading harder. Ilara's education had massive gaps. She could read at maybe a second grade level. Math was worse. The orphanage had given her minimal schooling. Tamara hired a deaf tutor, a university student named Declan, who used pure sign language. Ilara responded to him better than she'd responded to any hearing teacher. Slowly, she started catching up. The second year, Ilara joined the school's drama club. They performed stories in sign language poetry narratives. Tamara went to every rehearsal, every performance, watched Ilara on stage, using her hands to paint pictures in the air. Tamara learned more about deaf culture from watching her. The beauty of it, the history, the community. This wasn't a disability. It was a language, a culture, a whole world. Tamara had spent years learning about and was only now truly seeing. One evening, Ilara asked Tamara to tell her about the search, how she'd found her. They sat in the living room, and Tamara told her everything. The phone call from Alistair, the betrayal, the first pin on her map, 12 years of driving and asking and nearly giving up. Ilara cried, signed. You didn't give up on me. Never. Tamara signed back. Not for one day. Why? Because you're my granddaughter. Because you mattered. Because they were wrong about you. Ilara leaned against Tamara, and they stayed like that for a long moment, the quiet hum of the London flat enveloping them. I thought something was wrong with me. Ilara signed her hands, trembling slightly, her eyes meeting Tamara's. All those years, every family that came and left, I thought I was broken. Tamara hugged her fiercely, signing against her shoulder. You were never broken. Never. By the third year, Ilara was thriving. 15 years old, she exuded a confidence Tamara had never imagined that scared, quiet 12-year-old could possess. She performed in a regional sign language poetry competition, losing gracefully but radiant with the joy of being on stage, her hands painting vivid narratives in the air. Tamara had become deeply enmeshed in a community of deaf parents and advocates in London, attending meetups, fighting for accessibility, learning more every week about systems that sought to diminish deaf people. One night, as they prepared dinner together, Ilara paused, chopping vegetables, and signed, Why did they really give me up? Tamara had known this question would come eventually. She put down her knife. Because you're deaf. She signed, her voice gentle but firm. Honestly, they thought that made you damaged. She watched Ilara's face, ready for the pain. They were wrong, but that's what they believed. Do you think they regret it? Ilara signed. I don't know. I haven't spoken to them since. Ilara nodded slowly, then signed. Their loss. I have you. Tamara's throat tightened. I have you too, darling. The fourth year arrived faster than Tamara expected. Ilara turned 16. They talked about her future university, maybe. She wanted to study deaf education to help other deaf children who had grown up feeling like she had. You'd be amazing at that. Tamara signed, her heart swelling with pride. You think so? I know so. Then, on a Tuesday morning, an email arrived from an address Tamara hadn't seen in 16 years. Alistair's name in her inbox made her stomach drop. She stared at it for a full minute before clicking. The subject line read, Family. Her hand shook on the mouse. Mum, I know we haven't spoken in 16 years. I know what happened was unforgivable. I've thought about it every day. I've thought about you every day. I don't expect you to respond to this, but I need to tell you something. Genevieve and I adopted a son. His name is Gabriel. He's 18 now. A good kid. Better than I deserve. He's starting college, and he asked about you, asked if he had a grandmother. I told him yes, but that we'd had a falling out. He wants to meet you. I know I have no right to ask. I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness. But Gabriel does. He didn't do anything wrong. He deserves to know his grandmother. If you're willing, if you want to meet him, I'll make it happen. Whatever you need. I'm sorry, Mum, for everything. Alistair. Tamara read it 3 times. Then she closed the laptop and walked to the window, staring out at the grey London sky. A grandson. Alistair had adopted a son. After throwing Ilara away because she was deaf, he'd gone and adopted a boy. Kept him. Raised him for 18 years. The anger hit first, hot and sharp. They decided Ilara was too damaged to love, but another child was fine. A chosen child was acceptable. Then confusion. Why now? Why reach out after 16 years of silence? Then something else. Curiosity, maybe. This boy, Gabriel, 18 years old, he'd asked about her, wanted to meet her. Tamara didn't know what to feel. Ilara came home from school an hour later, finding Tamara still standing at the window. She signed, What's wrong? Tamara got her laptop and showed her the email, watching Ilara's face as she read. Her expression went carefully blank. When she finished, she looked up at Tamara. A grandson. I didn't know, Tamara signed. He never told me. They adopted him. Yes. Ilara was quiet for a long moment, then signed. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to delete it and pretend I never saw it. Part of me keeps thinking about this boy who didn't do anything wrong. He's adopted, Ilara signed. Like me. I know. Do you want to meet him? Tamara sat down on the couch. Maybe. Is that wrong? Ilara sat beside her. It's not wrong. He's your grandson. So are you. I know, but he doesn't know I exist and he's asking about you. She paused, signed carefully. If you want to go, I'll come with you. Tamara looked at her. Ilara, I can't ask you to face them. You're not asking. I'm offering. You shouldn't have to do this alone. They're the people who gave you up. Ilara met Tamara's gaze, her eyes surprisingly steady. I know who they are, but I also know who I am now. I'm not that scared baby anymore. I'm not even that broken 12-year-old. I'm okay. And you might need backup. Tamara almost smiled. Backup, moral support, whatever you want to call it. I'm coming. They can't know who you are. Not yet. Not until I figure out what they really want. Ilara nodded. So I'm just your adopted daughter from the UK. Which is true. Which is true, she agreed. When do we leave? Tamara looked at the email again at Alistair's words about mistakes and forgiveness, and this grandson she'd never met. Soon, she signed. Let me respond first. Set something up. Over the next week, Tamara exchanged emails with Alistair, careful and concise. She arranged to come to Connecticut, told him she'd be staying at her own estate there, the very property she'd acquired before moving to London, long before Ilara, before all of this. He offered to have them stay with them. She declined. I'm bringing my adopted daughter, she wrote. She's a wonderful girl, and I want her to meet the family. He replied that was fine, that he looked forward to meeting her. Tamara didn't tell him anything else. She wouldn't play her full hand until she understood the game. Ilara and Tamara packed their bags. Ilara was calmer about it than Tamara. The night before their flight, they double-checked everything. Passports, documents, phone chargers. Ilara looked at Tamara across the suitcases, signed. Are you scared? Terrified. Tamara signed back, a small wry smile touching her lips. Ilara smiled, signed. We've got this, Mum. Mum. She'd started calling Tamara that over a year ago. Every time it made Tamara's chest tighten with a complex mix of joy and deep, aching tenderness. The next morning, they flew out of Heathrow. Ilara slept peacefully on the plane. Tamara watched clouds drift past the window, her mind churning with what awaited them in Connecticut. Alistair and Genevieve, the grandson she'd never met. And Ilara strong and whole, heading back to face the people who'd decided she wasn't worth keeping. The plane landed at JFK. 7 hours later, they cleared customs, picked up their rental car, and drove north towards Greenwich, towards whatever came next. The Connecticut estate sat on 3 acres in Greenwich, the same town where Alistair still lived. Tamara had bought it years ago. A shrewd investment before everything fell apart, before her move to London, before the relentless 12-year search for Ilara. The house smelled like dust and closed windows when they arrived. Ilara helped Tamara pull covers off furniture, open curtains, turn on lights. They spent the afternoon making the place livable again, infusing it with their presence, readying it for the quiet battle to come. That evening, Tamara sent Alistair an email, simple, direct. I'm in Connecticut. When can we meet? His response came within an hour. Tomorrow, there's a restaurant on Greenwich Avenue, neutral ground. Whatever makes you comfortable, Tamara wrote back. The words polite, carefully neutral. Tomorrow at 6:00, I'm bringing Ilara. Looking forward to it, he replied. Tamara wasn't, not to meeting him. But she was looking forward to seeing what had become of them. The next evening, Ilara and Tamara arrived at the restaurant early, a quiet place with white tablecloths and soft lighting. Tamara had chosen it deliberately, public safe, easy to leave if needed. They sat near the window. Ilara watched the street, her hands folded in her lap. Tamara could see the tension in her shoulders. "You okay?" she signed. Ilara nodded. "Just nervous. We can leave any time." "I know. At Sec City." 15, they walked in. Alistair first, his head held a little too high. Then a woman who had to be Genevieve. Her composure, a brittle mask. Behind them, a tall young man. Tamara hadn't seen her son in 16 years. He looked older than 46, greyer at the temples, lines etched around his eyes thinner than she remembered. He wore a button-down shirt that had been expensive once, but was worn at the collar now. Genevieve looked diminished, still put together, but her clothes weren't designer anymore. Her jewelry was costume, not real. She held herself stiffly like she was performing composure, her eyes darting nervously around the room. The young man behind them had to be Gabriel. Tall, dark hair, kind eyes. He looked curious and a little nervous. Alistair reached Tamara first. "Mum," he began, his voice hesitant, a forced smile on his face. Tamara stood but didn't hug him, just looked at him, her gaze cool, assessing. "Alistair, thank you for coming, for agreeing to this." He gestured to the table. "Should we sit?" They sat. Gabriel took the seat across from Ilara. Alistair made introductions, his voice a little too loud. "Mom, this is Gabriel. Gabriel, this is your grandmother, Tamara." Gabriel smiled at Tamara, warm and genuine. "Hi, Grandma. I've wanted to meet you for a long time." His voice was kind, nothing like his parents' careful, rehearsed tones. "Gabriel," Tamara said. "It's nice to meet you too." She turned to Ilara. "This is Ilara, my adopted daughter from the UK. I found her in an orphanage when she was 12. She's deaf." Gabriel's face lit up immediately. He looked at Ilara, and his hands came up, moving through signs. "Hello," he signed. "Nice to meet you." Ilara's eyes went wide, surprised and delighted. She signed back. "Hi, you know sign language?" Gabriel signed and spoke at the same time. "A little. I'm really rusty. Studied it in high school. Your signing is good." Ilara signed back, a genuine smile transforming her face. Tamara watched Genevieve's face. A flicker of something passed across it. Discomfort, perhaps, but no recognition. Alistair looked uncomfortable too, but for different reasons. Old guilt, perhaps, bubbling to the surface. The waiter came. They ordered. Alistair tried to make conversation. "So, Mum, how have you been? How's London?" "Fine. Still managing properties?" "Yes." He nodded, tried again. "I've regretted so much. What happened. How we left things, eightings. I think about it all the time." Tamara looked at him directly, her eyes piercing. "Do you?" "Yes. I was young, stupid. I made terrible decisions." Genevieve touched his arm, a warning squeeze, but he kept going, fueled by a desperation Tamara was now keenly observing. "I want to make it right if that's even possible." Tamara didn't respond, turning her attention to Gabriel instead. She asked him about school, about his plans. He lit up, talking about community college, not a prestigious university. He wanted to study something. He wasn't sure what yet. Maybe social work. Maybe education. "Why social work?" Tamara asked, subtly probing. He shrugged. "I like helping people. And I think I understand what it's like to feel like you don't fit." Ilara was watching him carefully, a silent observer. Tamara asked Alistair and Genevieve about their lives. They talked about downsizing and simpler living. When Tamara asked direct questions, their answers stayed vague. Alistair mentioned they'd moved to a smaller place. Genevieve changed the subject when Tamara asked why. Something felt off, a tremor beneath the polished surface of their performance. Tamara logged every detail. Gabriel, meanwhile, kept talking to Ilara, kept signing despite his rustiness. Asked her real questions about what it was like being deaf, about the orphanage, about London. How long were you there? He signed. In the orphanage, Ilara's hands moved slowly. My whole childhood, from when I was a baby until Tamara found me. That must have been hard. It was. Gabriel nodded, a profound empathy in his gaze. Something in his expression said he understood more than most people would. When dinner ended, Alistair asked if they could meet again. Gabriel really wants to get to know you, he said, his eyes on Tamara, not his son. And I'd like to, if you're willing. Tamara looked at Gabriel at his hopeful, open expression. We can meet again? Alistair's relief was visible, a slight slackening of his shoulders. Maybe at your place next time, less formal. Fine. Tamara agreed, already plotting. They scheduled it for the following week. Walking to the car, Ilara signed, "He's nice, Gabriel." "Yes," Tamara signed back. "He's nothing like them. I noticed he really knows sign language. Not well, but he tried." He did. The second meeting happened at Tamara's estate. Gabriel brought flowers, real ones, not expensive, a grocery store bouquet. "For Grandma and Ilara," he said, his smile genuine. Alistair and Genevieve made awkward small talk in the living room. Tamara answered in monosyllables, watching them, noting the subtle desperation in their eyes, the careful way they avoided certain topics. Ilara sat quiet, observing everything. After 20 minutes, Gabriel, sensing the tension, asked Ilara if she wanted to see the garden. She looked at Tamara. Tamara nodded a silent approval. They went out to the terrace, leaving Tamara with Alistair and Genevieve in increasingly uncomfortable silence. Through the window, Tamara could see Gabriel and Ilara signing, laughing. Something was happening between them, a connection. Alistair followed Tamara's gaze. "He's a good kid. He seems like it. We're proud of him." Tamara didn't respond to that, letting the silence hang heavy, a judgment unspoken. The fake family dialogues were proceeding as expected. Alistair and Genevieve were playing their part, trying to draw her in, while Tamara remained the detached observer, gathering her mental evidence. The third meeting. Gabriel came alone, saying his parents had something to do, but he wanted to visit if that was okay. It was more than okay. He and Ilara disappeared to the garden again. Tamara watched from the kitchen window while she made tea. They sat on the stone bench, Gabriel's phone out, typing something, Ilara responding. Both of them engrossed in conversation, a world of their own. When they came inside an hour later, both looked happy, comfortable. Gabriel stayed for dinner. They ordered pizza, sat around the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room. Gabriel asked Tamara about finding Ilara, about the adoption process, about raising a deaf teenager. Tamara answered honestly, carefully. He listened like he really cared. After he left, Ilara sat with Tamara in the living room. "He's different," she signed, "than his parents, than anyone I've met. He gets it. The adoption thing. Feeling like you're supposed to be grateful all the time." "Did he say that?" "Not exactly, but I can tell." The fourth meeting, Gabriel came over in the afternoon. Alistair and Genevieve had dropped him off, saying they'd pick him up later. Gabriel and Ilara went straight to the garden. Tamara gave them space, made lemonade, and brought it out after a while. They were sitting close, Gabriel showing Ilara something on his phone, signs he'd learned from someone. Ilara was correcting his hand shapes gently. They both laughed when he got one wrong. He tried again, got it right. She applauded. Tamara left the lemonade and went back inside, watching from the window. The ease between them struck her. It was as if they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. When Alistair came to pick Gabriel up that evening, Gabriel hugged Tamara. Actually hugged her. "Thanks, Grandma," he said, his voice warm, "for letting me come over, for being cool about everything." "You're welcome any time," Tamara replied, and she meant it. So did he. After they left, Tamara stood at the window. Ilara came up beside her. "Something's wrong," she signed. "What do you mean?" "With them, Alistair and Genevieve." The way they dress, the way they act. Gabriel coming over alone. Something happened to them. Tamara had been thinking the same thing, filing away every observation. You noticed too. Hard not to, but Gabriel doesn't seem like them at all. No, Tamara agreed. He doesn't. Whatever Alistair and Genevieve were hiding, whatever had brought them back into Tamara's life after all these years, it was hard to believe that it was truly about reconciliation. Let's see. But Gabriel was real. His kindness was real. His connection with Alara was real. And that was worth something. Even if everything else was a lie, this much was true. A month had passed since that first awkward dinner. Gabriel had been coming to the estate every few days sometimes with Alistair and Genevieve, more often alone. The bond between him and Alara had deepened into something that looked like real siblinghood. They signed to each other constantly, laughed at jokes Tamara didn't always catch. Sat close on the garden bench with their phones out, texting things they didn't want to say out loud. Tamara watched it happen and felt grateful and worried because eventually the truth would have to come out. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Gabriel had come over alone again, saying his parents were busy. He and Alara went straight to the garden, like always. Tamara stayed inside, made coffee, started answering emails in the study. An hour passed, then 2. Usually they came in by then, hungry or thirsty, or ready to include Tamara in whatever conversation they'd been having. But the house stayed quiet. Tamara looked out the window. They were still on the bench, but something was different. Gabriel's shoulders were hunched. Ilara's hands moved fast, urgent. Even from this distance, Tamara could see the tension. She almost went out. Then Alara looked toward the house, saw Tamara at the window, shook her head slightly. Not yet. So, Tamara waited another 30 minutes. Then the back door opened. They came in together. Gabriel's eyes were red. Ilara's face was set in that careful, blank expression she got when she was holding back emotions. They found Tamara in the study, stood in the doorway. We need to talk to you, Ilara signed. Tamara closed her laptop. Okay. They sat on the couch. Tamara took the chair across from them. Gabriel couldn't look at her. Ilara reached over and squeezed his hand. What happened? Tamara asked, her voice calm, ready for the revelation she knew was coming. Gabriel started. His voice came out rough. I need to tell you something about why my parents really came back. Why they wanted me to meet you. Tamara had suspected this conversation was coming, but she stayed quiet, letting him talk. 6 months ago, my grandfather got arrested. My mum's dad. He'd been running some kind of investment scheme for years, like a Ponzi scheme. It collapsed. The government seized everything. He's in federal prison now. Tamara processed that. Genevieve's family old money, prestigious name, all gone. Gabriel continued, his voice heavy with shame. They lost everything. The house, the cars, the savings, all of it. My dad lost his job because he only had it through connections to my mum's family. Now those connections won't touch us. Where are you living? Tamara asked. 2-bedroom apartment, other side of town. They're facing bankruptcy. They owe money everywhere. The pieces clicked into place. The worn clothes, the vague answers, the desperation under Alistair's apologetic performance. And they came back to me for money, Tamara thought. And they came back to me for money, she said, verbalizing her thought, her voice flat. Gabriel nodded, couldn't meet her eyes. They coached me before we came to that first dinner. Told me what to say, how to act. They said you'd help if I played up the grandson thing, that you'd feel guilty about missing out on my childhood and want to make it up to me. Ilara was watching Tamara carefully, checking her reaction. And you went along with it, Tamara said to Gabriel, her gaze unwavering. At first, he finally looked at her, his eyes pleading for understanding. I didn't know what else to do. They're my parents. I thought maybe they really did want family, that the money was secondary. But then I met you and Alara, and I realized this is what real family feels like. Not performance, not obligation, just connection. His voice cracked. I feel sick about it. About lying to you about being part of their scheme. You and Alara are the first people who've ever made me feel like I could just be myself. And I'm here under false pretenses. You're 18, Tamara said, her voice softening, cutting through his self-recrimination. You're here because they brought you. That's not your fault. But I kept coming back. I kept letting them think their plan was working. Alara signed something to him. He nodded, taking a deep breath. There's more, Gabriel said. About them. About how they treated people. Alara asked me to tell you something about when I was younger, Gabriel explained. He took a breath. When I was 16, I dated a girl, Hannah. She was deaf. I learned sign language for her. We were together for 6 months. Tamara could see where this was going. Her chest tightened. My parents found out and lost their minds. They said I couldn't date those people, that it would ruin my prospects, that deaf people had their own world, and I didn't belong there. They made me break up with her. I was 17. I did what they told me. His hands clenched into fists. I've regretted it ever since. Ilara's face had gone very still. That's why my signing is rusty. Gabriel continued, a fresh wave of self-loathing washing over him. I haven't used it since then. Couldn't stand thinking about Hannah, about what I did. The room went quiet, heavy with unspoken truths. Then Ilara started signing her hands, decisive, rapid. Gabriel watched her hands. She's saying I need to tell you something now. He interpreted, his voice strained. About her. Tamara looked at Ilara. What is it, darling? Ilara took a breath, then signed and spoke at the same time. Her voice a little reedy from disuse, but clear. I'm not just some adopted girl Tamara found. I'm your parents' biological daughter. Gabriel's face went blank, then contorted in disbelief. What? Ilara kept going. Her hands steady, even though Tamara could see them trembling. They gave me up for adoption when they found out I was deaf. I was less than 2 weeks old. Tamara was flying from London to meet me. By the time she got here, I was already gone. They'd given me to an adoption agency and wouldn't tell her where. Gabriel sat frozen, the blood draining from his face. Tamara searched for me for 12 years, Ilara continued. Every orphanage, every agency, every deaf school. She finally found me when I was 12. I'd been in an orphanage my whole childhood. Nobody wanted to adopt a deaf kid. No, Gabriel whispered, a strangled sound. That's not. They wouldn't. But he could hear the truth in his own voice. They would. They had. They gave you away because you were deaf. His voice came out flat, hollow. And then they adopted me because I was perfect. Ilara nodded, her eyes unwavering. Gabriel stood up, sat back down, put his head in his hands. The same people who made me break up with Hannah because she was deaf. They threw away their own baby for being deaf. Ilara signed. It's not your fault, Gabriel. I know. He looked up, his face wet with tears. But they kept me. They raised me. And you were alone in an orphanage for 12 years because they decided you weren't worth keeping. Tamara couldn't speak. Watching Gabriel process this, watching him connect the pieces, was like witnessing a dam break. He stood up again, started pacing the study, his movements jerky, agitated. I can't go back there. I can't look at them knowing this, knowing what they did to Ilara, knowing they only brought me here to manipulate you. He stopped in the middle of the room, turned to face Tamara, his eyes desperate. I'm 18. I can choose where I live. His voice shook. Can I stay here with you and Ilara? Of course you can stay, Gabriel, Tamara said. Her voice clear and strong, filled with an unexpected tenderness. This is your home now. His face crumpled, and he let out a choked sob. Ilara stood up and hugged him, holding on to him tightly like she was the only solid thing in the room. Over his shoulder, Ilara looked at Tamara, her eyes asking, "What do we do now?" "Now," Tamara said, a steely resolve settling into her bones. "We tell them the truth. All of it. Let them know we know about the money, about the scheme, about who Ilara really is." Gabriel pulled back from Ilara, wiping his face. "When? Soon? I'll invite them to dinner. Here, we'll end this. I should be the one to tell them," Gabriel said, his voice finding a new strength. "About the money. About what I know." "You don't have to, Gabriel." "I do. I was part of it. Even if I didn't want to be, I need to own that." Ilara signed. "We'll do it together, all three of us." Tamara looked at them. Her two grandchildren, one she'd searched for, one she'd just found. Both choosing truth over comfort. Both choosing this makeshift family over the one that had used them. Together, she agreed. Gabriel sat back down, Ilara beside him. Tamara moved to the couch and sat on Ilara's other side. They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them processing, preparing for what came next. Outside, the sun started setting, casting long shadows across the garden. Inside, they held each other, a grandmother and two grandchildren, ready to face the people who'd hurt them. Ready to end this. 3 days after Gabriel and Ilara told Tamara everything, she sent the invitation. "Alistair, Genevieve, please come to dinner at my estate this Saturday at 7. There's something we need to discuss." Alistair's response came within the hour. "We'd love to. Thank you, Mum. See you then." Tamara could read the hope in those words, the assumption that she was finally ready to help them, that their plan had worked. She felt a grim satisfaction. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Gabriel had been staying in one of the guest rooms since Thursday hadn't gone back to his parents' apartment. They'd called twice. He'd let it go to voicemail. That afternoon, the three of them prepared, setting the dining room table with the good china, making a roast with vegetables, opening a decent bottle of claret to let it breathe. Gabriel was quiet, kept checking his phone. Setting it down, picking it up again. "You don't have to do this, Gabriel," Tamara said gently. "Ilara and I can handle it." "No." He put the phone in his pocket, his jaw set. "I need to. I was part of their plan. I need to own that." Ilara touched his arm, signed. "We're with you." He nodded, tried to smile. At 7, exactly, the doorbell rang. Tamara answered it. Alistair and Genevieve stood on the porch. They'd dressed up. Alistair in a suit that used to fit better, the fabric a little too shiny. Genevieve in a dress that had been expensive once, but now seemed a little dated. She held a bottle of wine, her smile too bright, too forced. "Tamara," she chirped, "we brought wine for tonight. Come in," Tamara said, her voice betraying none of the steel beneath. They followed her to the dining room. Alistair's eyes went to Gabriel, who sat at the table next to Ilara, an unsettling calm in his posture. "Gabriel, I thought you'd be home by now." "Change of plans," Gabriel said, his voice steady. They sat. Tamara served the roast, poured wine, made small talk while they settled in. Alistair tried too hard to fill the silence, asked Gabriel about college plans, complimented the house. Genevieve added agreement to everything he said. Her voice a little too eager. Ilara sat quiet. Her hands in her lap, clenched tight. They ate. Tamara let them relax, let them think this was going the way they'd planned. Dessert came out apple pie, coffee. Genevieve set down her fork and glanced at Alistair. "Tamara," she said, her voice dropping to a carefully earnest tone. "We wanted to talk to you about something important before you continue," Tamara said, her voice cutting through the expectant silence. "I have something to tell you both." She stood slowly, deliberately, and laid her napkin beside her plate. Gabriel and Elara sat straighter, their gazes fixed on their parents. "This is Elara." Tamara began, her voice steady cold. "But I haven't been entirely truthful about who she is." Alistair's face shifted from hopeful anticipation to confusion. Genevieve went perfectly still, her painted smile faltering. "Elara isn't just an adopted daughter I found 4 years ago." Tamara continued, her eyes sweeping over them, letting the full weight of her words settle. "She was in that Virginia orphanage for 12 years before I found her, since she was less than 2 weeks old." Genevieve's hand holding her coffee cup started shaking. Her fork clattered against the plate. Given up for adoption by parents who didn't want a deaf baby, Tamara pressed on. Relentless, who thought she was damaged, who wouldn't even tell the grandmother where she was. Alistair's fork stopped halfway to his mouth, a piece of apple suspended precariously. His face had gone grey. "I searched for her for 12 years, Tamara said, her voice rising now, filled with the fury of a decade of heartache. "Every orphanage, every adoption agency, every deaf school and program across 6 states. I learned sign language so that when I finally found her, I could communicate with my granddaughter in her own language." "Tamara!" Genevieve's voice came out thin, a desperate whisper. "That's not what this is. That's not—" Her birthmark matched Alistair's. Tamara interrupted, cutting her off with a sharp, dismissive gesture. "Same place, same body shape." Her background matched the timeline. The DNA test confirmed it with 99.7% certainty. Tamara looked directly at Alistair, her eyes glacial. "This is your daughter, the granddaughter you threw away." Alistair put down his fork. His face was ashen, his mouth slightly agape. "You cut me off when I begged you to reconsider," Tamara said, her voice a low, dangerous rumble. "You gave her away at less than 2 weeks old and wouldn't tell me where. I arrived from London to meet her and she was already gone." Genevieve started crying, not sad tears, but panic tears, silent and streaming down her carefully made-up face. "We didn't know," she choked out. "We were young. We didn't know how to handle a deaf child." "You were 28 and 30? Tamara countered, her voice sharp, dismissive of the pathetic excuse. "You had money, resources, family. You didn't want her. There's a difference." Gabriel stood up, his chair scraping loudly on the floor. "And I know why you're really here. Not for family, not for reconciliation. For money." Alistair turned to him, a look of betrayal replacing the fear in his eyes. "Son, that's not true. I told them everything," Gabriel said, his voice shaking but holding steady, remarkable in its newfound resolve. "About your father's Ponzi scheme, the bankruptcy, how you coached me before that first dinner, how you told me to play up the grandson angle because Grandma would feel guilty and help." Alistair's mouth opened, then closed. Nothing came out. "I heard you practicing," Gabriel continued, his voice gaining strength, each word a hammer blow. "What you'd say when you finally asked her for money. How you'd frame it. What words to use." Genevieve was sobbing now, her hands covering her face. "We had no choice. We lost everything. Your grandfather destroyed us. You had choices," Tamara stated, utterly devoid of sympathy. "You made them. You gave away an infant because she was deaf. Because your family cared more about appearances more than a baby's life." Elara stood, her hands moving with fierce, articulate grace, and she spoke at the same time, her voice clear and strong. "I spent 12 years in that orphanage, 12 years watching families come and leave without me, 12 years thinking something was wrong with me, that I was the problem." Alistair looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Tamara saw the recognition hit the birthmark, the age, the timeline. "Elara," he whispered, a guttural sound of disbelief. "You don't get to say my name," she signed, her voice firm. "You gave up that right when you gave me away." Gabriel stepped closer to Elara, a protective stance. "You forced me to break up with Hannah when I was 17. Said dating deaf people would ruin my prospects. Called them those people. His voice was tight with anger. The whole time you'd thrown away your own baby for being deaf. That was different. Genevieve whimpered from behind her hands. How? Gabriel's voice rose, demanding an answer that wasn't forthcoming. How was it different? No answer came. Alistair tried one more time, desperation etched on his face. Mum, please. We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But we're still family. No! Tamara said, her voice a final, unyielding judgment. You made your choice when you gave away your daughter. I made mine when I spent 12 years searching for her. And Gabriel has made his. Gabriel looked at his parents, his face a mixture of grief and fierce resolve. I know you raised me. I know you gave me a home. But what you did to Alara, I can't look past that. I'm staying with them. Gabriel! Genevieve stood, her face contorted, her panic giving way to anger. You can't just abandon us. We raised you. We're your parents. Alara needed parents, and you threw her away, Gabriel said, his voice breaking. I need a real family now. Tamara pointed to the door, her hand steady, her gaze unwavering. Leave my home. Don't contact us again. You lost your children. Both of them. That's the consequence of your choices. Alistair stood slowly, a defeated slump to his shoulders. Genevieve was crying too hard to speak, her sobs echoing in the now silent dining room. He took her arm, pulling her gently. Mom, he said one last time, a plea, a whisper of the past. Goodbye, Alistair. Tamara's voice was utterly final, closing the door on 16 years of absence, sealing the consequences of his choices. They walked out. Tamara heard the front door open and close, then car doors, an engine starting tires crunching on gravel. Then silence profound and absolute. Gabriel sat down hard, putting his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Alara moved to him, putting her arms around him, her gentle touch a balm. Tamara sat on his other side, holding them both, a silent guardian. It's over, she said, her voice low and soothing. Gabriel cried relief and grief mixed together, the raw pain of a child, disabused of his illusions about his parents. Alara cried 2 silent tears, tracking paths down her face, the slow release of years of unspoken hurt. They stayed like that until the candles on the table burned low and the coffee went cold. Then slowly they cleaned up together, washing dishes, putting away leftovers, normal tasks that felt grounding, anchoring them in their new reality. After everything, Gabriel slept in the guest room that night, Alara in hers. Tamara lay awake thinking about Alistair, about the son she'd raised and the man he'd become, about the daughter he'd thrown away, and the grandson who'd chosen truth over comfort. In the morning, they'd figure out next steps, planning their return to London, enrolling Gabriel in university there, getting him a passport if he needed one. But that night, they just existed, 3 people who'd found each other, who'd chosen each other, who'd become family, not through blood, but through dedication and love. 3 months later, they were back in London. Alara returned to her deaf school for her final years, thriving in her studies and social life. Gabriel enrolled at University College London, studying social work, his purpose solidified by his past. The flat was crowded with the 3 of them, but it worked, a bustling, warm space filled with laughter and signing. Gabriel's sign language improved daily. Alara helped him practice, corrected his grammar, taught him new signs, their bond deepening with every shared word. One morning, Tamara came into the kitchen to find them already there. Alara setting the table, Gabriel making toast, an easy routine they'd fallen into. Hannah texted last night, Gabriel said, a shy smile on his face. Alara looked up, signed. What did she say? That she got my apology, that she appreciated it. He smiled slightly. We're going to keep talking. See where it goes. She's still in Connecticut, so it's complicated, but it's something. Ilara grinned, signed something that made him laugh, and signed back. Tamara made coffee, watched them, her grandchildren. "What are you thinking about?" Ilara signed to her. Tamara signed back, a profound sense of peace settling over her. "How lucky I am. How worth it the search was." Gabriel came over, hugged her a warm, strong embrace. "We're the lucky ones, Grandma." Ilara joined them, completing the circle. The three of them stood in the kitchen in their pajamas, morning light streaming through the windows, illuminating their intertwined hands. They'd started as broken pieces, a grandmother searching a girl, abandoned a boy used. Now they were whole. Not perfect. Not without complications. But family. Real family. And that was everything. The quiet of the London morning settled around Tamara, a comforting contrast to the dramatic confrontation just weeks ago. Standing here with Ilara and Gabriel, a tapestry of choice and resilience woven around her, she understood something profound about self-worth. It isn't granted by birthright or decreed by societal status. It is forged in the crucible of adversity, in the unwavering pursuit of what is right, and in the courage to choose connection over convention. Tamara's journey wasn't just about finding Ilara. It was about finding a deeper truth within herself. It was about defining family, not by shared blood, but by shared values, by unconditional love, and by the relentless commitment to stand by those who need you most. The superficial allure of old money, old families had crumbled, revealing the hollow core beneath. In its place, something authentic and enduring had blossomed. If you saw yourself in Tamara's story, in the quiet strength of her resolve, or the painful clarity of her choices, remember that every ending is a new beginning. Every rejection can be a redirection. Every heartbreak, a lesson in resilience. The greatest victories are often not in reclaiming what was lost, but in building something entirely new, something stronger and truer than anything that came before. Subscribe for more stories that explore the depths of human spirit and the unbreakable bonds of chosen family. And may your own path be illuminated by peace, purpose, and the unwavering light of self-worth.